Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Topical Hour. Today we're going to be taking a look at Days Gone, released in 2019. This game was considered a failure by its own company management, which I think is wildly untrue. This is definitely one of my favorite games of all time after completing it, for a multitude of reasons. But before we continue, I just want to remind you guys to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, the Topical Hour now has a home on Twitter, so if you feel like looking at thoughts that are too short for videos but too strong to be kept in my head, then click the Twitter link in the description and check it out. Without further ado, let's jump into why Days Gone failed and why it definitely shouldn't have. This is the part of the video where I also give a spoiler warning, because even if you bought this game, I'm pretty sure most of you haven't played it. Also, as a side note, we are at a phase where you can still see the number go up when you subscribe, so take advantage of that. Right now. Right now! The story is probably slightly weaker than the gameplay. I still think it's pretty good, however. We start the game off with Deacon St. John, his wife Sarah, and his brother-in-arms, Boozer. On the night of the initial outbreak of freakers, which are just zombies, Boozer is injured when the three are trying to make it to a helicopter for evacuation. When one of the men in charge of evacuation says that there's only room for 2 on the helicopter, Boozer volunteers to stay and let Deacon and Sarah go, but Deacon knows that Boozer will die if he leaves him, so he puts Sarah on the chopper and stays with Boozer. Now, the main story of the game actually takes place roughly 2 years later in post-apocalyptic Oregon. It's also worth mentioning that this game is really long. It is literally longer than Gordon Ramsay's forehead wrinkles, and I do not say that lightly. I thought about summarizing this game's story, but not only is it longer than most basketball players' legs, I know a lot of you haven't played this game. Go play the game, even if you played through the beginning, give it another shot, it's pretty good. So back to the story, it is admittedly a bit weak. A lot of the things that feel important in the beginning lose significance, like Copeland's camp and the Hot Springs camp. Both of these camps have zero weight later in the story, and the Hot Springs camp enslaves people to run, so there's very little reason to support either camp past gameplay. But past that, I think the story is also a bit predictable at times. In the beginning, Deacon and Boozer speak about going up north, and as someone who has access to the in-game map, I know that's not going to happen. There's no actual reason to force that in, and it just lets me know that something was going to happen to Boozer early on. And Boozer loses his arm because of the cult known as the Rippers. Boozer is a fine character, a side character to go. I definitely like the relationship that him and Deacon have, because they really do feel like brothers, even if they're not technically related. The only thing I don't like is how weird they make Boozer towards the middle of the game. He starts hallucinating and acting out of character, and he gets drunk and runs off for a mission where you have to track him down. It just feels like more padding to the story, and I like him best when he wasn't doing anything abnormal. And the relationship he had with Deacon was definitely great. Mark Copeland runs his camp and does not do much else. He seems like an okay person, but not really stand up, which is fine. This game presents his character a little bit ambiguously, but he has this radio channel that he comes on to every once in a while to ramble about conspiracy theories. And it sucks because Deacon can't say he's wrong with most of them. If the movie Moonfall was a character, it would probably be Copeland. Tucker is a character who's probably the weirdest inclusion of the game, seeing as she enslaves people to run her camp, but Deacon still works for her. She's also definitely an afterthought in terms of story, and it doesn't have any depth that's interesting. Ricky Patil is bisexual, which is the first 90% of her character, and the other 10% is being a leader. Her character definitely works in tandem with Iron Mike, who leads the Lost Lake camp. I actually like his character because he's really just an older guy who has seen so much unnecessary violence and death that he really just wants peace and prosperity above all else. And of course, Ricky supports these endeavors. It's also worth mentioning that Ricky has a subtle relationship with the medic of Lost Lake camp, Addie, and you can definitely see the more subtle moments of their development together as the story goes on. As for the villains, being Carlos, the General, and Schizo, I like how they're set up throughout the story. I also like that even though the General is probably the biggest threat of the game, Schizo serves as a better central antagonist because he betrays Deacon and gets so many people killed. And then there's Carlos, who leads the Rippers. He doesn't really get that much interesting character work, but apparently Deacon and Boozer used to know the guy before the freaker stuff went down. And then the General is probably the weakest of the villains narratively, seeing as he's introduced far too late into the game to have any real time to give him more depth. Now the main character, Deacon St. John. Deacon is kind of a mixed bag for me. I like his character, but it feels like they're forcing it a little bit. He tries comically hard to show he's not a leader, until the end of course, and it's also weirdly focused on how much he disliked killing unarmed women. I don't know, man, feels like you'd get canceled for that Titanic mentality in this day and age. But I do like just how devoted he is to Sarah and his brotherly bond with Boozer. I also like that he doesn't even try to start any kind of relationship with Ricky, even when she clearly hints towards it. And it's worth mentioning that the voice acting in this game is also pretty amazing, especially from Deacon himself. It feels like he's actually talking with whoever he's talking to, rather than sitting in a recording booth reading lines. And I probably should have saved this for the gameplay portion, but the game also looks as natural as the dialogue is. A complaint that I've always had about games taking place in cities or places like that is that they never feel lived in or like something was happening there before the game took place. The nature looks great, the character models, or at least the main characters, look great, and even all of the different outfits look pretty good. What I'm trying to say is that between the voice acting and the immaculate graphics and lighting, the game feels incredibly organic, and it lends itself to the story really well. Back to Deacon himself, he feels like a solid character with a few weird quirks. I definitely like him, although it is a shame that he can be inconsistent at times. I mean, he drowns an entire village of people, which is probably filled with innocent, albeit brainwashed people, and unarmed women, which he seems to be really funny about. It's just weird to be so specific about him not killing unarmed women, but also just flood an entire city. But I also like that we allow him to let loose and be a little bit of a bad guy sometimes. He obviously has a moral fiber in his body, but he's also been hardened by years in this new world. That's a good thing. It gives his character more depth than just being a diamond in the rough who doesn't like killing. You gonna cry, Deacon?
Blow up that dam and drown that village of people, you wuss.
If we look at the gameplay, this game is fantastic. It can be admittedly a little bit clunky to move around at times, and it can lead to dying unfairly, and it can be quite frustrating. I also think that to acquire new items to use, it can be a little bit slow. There's a lot of talk in this game about Deacon being an apex individual who can handle just about anything, but it takes a little while to feel exactly what the characters mean when they say that. It feels like the progression in this game is almost limited at the beginning, so the start of the game can be a turnoff for people for sure. But an hour or so in, that's when the game definitely kicks off. In fact, there's a lot of progression to be had in this game as it goes on, and it can feel a little bit daunting after not having much in the beginning. A big example of this is the bike. The bike is definitely a pillar of this game, and there's a lot of different stuff to upgrade, like the engine and the frame, the gas tank, and the nitrous boost, and even the general look of the bike. The performance of the bike will frustrate you if you don't upgrade it, but you can't upgrade your bike or buy guns unless you upgrade the trust level of a camp. I also kind of thought that it was weird that the only vehicles that are used in this game are bikes, but I guess it makes a little bit of sense. Like in The Last of Us, when only horses are used to get around. Bikes aren't necessarily easy to upkeep, but they're definitely a little bit quieter than big cars, so it makes a little bit of sense at least. Now, there are multiple camps you can visit in this game, and you have to upgrade all of them to use all of them to their maximum capacity in a system called the Trust System. But starting with one is fine, with Copeland's camp being the first you can use. The problem with upgrading these camps, however, is that you have to do it by killing zombies for bounties, collecting animal meat and plants, and doing jobs for the camp runner. But it's difficult to do that when you don't have good guns or a fast bike. Now, the beginning of the game is still pretty easy for the player, but I think I'd fix this upgrade process by adding another trust tier, but making it easier to earn each tier. It takes a while to upgrade trust, and it can be annoying to find another camp and realize you have to upgrade that one as well to actually get any use out of it. But something I do like is that some camps are better at some things than others, like Copeland's camp doesn't sell guns, but other camps will not work on your bike past refilling the fuel and repairing what's already there. So, the camps are pretty good, but upgrading their trust takes a bit too long. As for the actual combat and stealth of the game, I really like it. The combat can feel a bit clunky and hard to get used to, but I think that's the point. As you go along building new melee weapons that are stronger and more durable and unlocking skills that up your damage, fighting feels a lot easier. As for health and stamina, you die really fast and you get tired really fast. And I like that these two things aren't upgradable by conventional means. You actually have to explore the world and find these Nero checkpoints to upgrade your health, stamina, or focus. Side note, I will say that the Nero checkpoints are one of my favorite parts of the game. It usually requires genuine problem solving, sometimes on how to get to the checkpoint over water, and sometimes on how to repair the electrical system. Sometimes the alarms on the base will trigger a horde to spawn, and if you're not ready or you don't disable the alarms, you're going to have to leave and try again later, or possibly die. But past that, the enemies in this game are another pretty good feature. The zombies, or freakers, with this being yet another game that refuses to acknowledge that they are zombies, they have a really good degree of difficulty. Now usually a group of 4 or 5 or even 10 isn't really a problem, but then you have the stronger ones like Reachers, or the Breakers, or infected animals like Ragers, Runners, or Criers. You have to keep them in the back of your mind or you'll get blindsided and killed. And obviously the main and most dangerous freaker threat variant is the Hordes. No matter how many skills or bullets you have in this game, taking on a Horde can kill you if you don't handle it properly or if you're ambushed. Which is cool. It adds a threat to the game that's persistent even as you progress. Just want to take this moment in the video to remind you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Right now! Now for the slightly more disappointing enemy type. Literally everyone else. Pretty much all of the human enemies in this game aren't really a challenge past a certain point in the game, and there are not enough chases with the bike to spice things up. I mean, really, it only feels like there are melee enemies, ranged enemies, and thick ranged enemies, and they all feel pretty easy. I just feel like their weapons should feel a lot stronger, and maybe that's fixed on the higher difficulties, but I just feel like the human enemies should definitely ramp up more as the game goes on. And me playing on normal should never be an excuse for a game feeling easy. However, it's not stupid easy. I'll never walk into an ambush ambush camp low on ammo or on supplies and expect an easy way out. But I rarely expect to die to humans, lest I'm genuinely caught by surprise. So, you might be wondering what I mean when I say that this game failed. Well, this game is almost never talked about when talking about the heavy-hitting games of the last few years. It was released after God of War, Red Dead 2, and Spider-Man, but it was a zombie game released before The Last of Us Part 2, easily one of the most famous zombie games in recent memory. So the marketing was going to the former 3 and the latter 1. I never even remembered a trailer for this game and never ended up buying it, I just got it for free. Another reason no one talks about this game, the beginning is pretty terrible. I mean, even the loading time for this game takes a while. Unfortunately for this game, people want to leap right into the action with a huge fight. A lot of the games that were released before this game that I mentioned did something like this. This game starts out with the storyline that doesn't really hook you properly, along with stagnant progression and gameplay. This means that yes, a lot of people bought this game, but I know that maybe half of people actually completed it. And it also doesn't help that this game takes a minimum of 24 hours to complete. So yes, I think in a sense of how many people have played this game, at least to the main story's completion, it definitely failed, unfortunate as this feels. It really sucks to me too, because I really like this game. If there's one game where it was hard to give a number rating without being distracted by how much I like this game, it's this one. But the reality of it is that this game is really good. It definitely doesn't deserve the hate that it gets, although it can't be put past criticism either, which makes it difficult to place on a number scale out of 10. I think the characters are all great with a few messy choices here and there. I think there's a lot of post-game content, which is interesting considering just how long the main story in itself actually is, and the game looks amazing and the voice acting is stellar. And the gameplay falters a bit on the progression and human enemies, but I'm sure that could be fixed with some difficulty adjustments in the settings. All of these things come together in the end to make a really good game that unfortunately failed due to a weaker beginning, undercooked marketing, and honestly even the promotional material for this game leads people to believe that it's just another survival game and not really worth checking out. But I believe in spite of this, it delivers on gameplay, it delivers on story, and it delivers on content. So, for all those things, this game gets an 8.5 out of 10. It's really good and definitely delivers on fantastic crafting, survival, and combat gameplay, and at least a serviceable story. And before someone points out the sale numbers of the game or the fact that they knew it was good from the beginning, I know a lot of you didn't even bother playing it past the beginning. And the company's executives have literally said that they consider this game a failure. So yes, this game failed, and it definitely shouldn't have. And it's also one of the most underrated games I've ever played, and it's definitely going in my personal top 10 for the future. Anyway guys, I know it's been a bit since I uploaded, but again, these videos take a long time to make, so bear with me. I'll remind you, if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter using the link in the description, and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss more content similar to this. Right now! Or not, that's fine. Play nice, people.